Hello, and welcome back to Kim's Codex, where today we're going to be talking about my personal favorite story, Anansi and the Sky Blue Storybox. Now, Anansi is a fairly common character in African folklore. In Native American mythology, he's like the raven. He's sometimes a trickster, sometimes very clever, and sometimes his schemes don't work out quite in his favor. His tales, however, are always entertaining. Now, Anansi the spider wanted to go see Nyame the sky man, so he spun a web all the way up to Nyame's palace in the skies. When he got there, he asked Nyame, "What is your most prized possession?" And Nyame reached over to the stand next to him and pulled out a beautiful box. It was the color of the sky and it sparkled like stars. And he said, "Inside this are all the stories in the world, and this is my most prized possession." And Anansi sat and thought about, what could I do with all the stories in the world? Everywhere, people would be coming to me for stories and listening to everything I had to say. And he loved that idea, so he calmed himself down from his excitement a bit and said, "Nyame, would you consider selling your story box to me? And if so, for what price?" So Nyame thought, and thought, and thought. And Anansi, who was never a patient character, was almost ready to give up and go home before Nyame answered, "I will sell you the story box. The price will be the spots from a leopard, a hive of hornets, a rainbow python, and a creature from the forest that nobody can see." So Anansi bowed to Nyame and said, "I'll be back when I have your fare." And he climbed down his spider web back to his home and thought, well, the first one was going to be easy enough. He dug a hole next to his house and invited his friend Leopard over for dinner. And after that night at dinner, Anansi brought out some wine, and they laughed, and they drank, and they talked, and they drank, and they laughed some more, and then they drank some more, and Anansi was careful to water his wine down with water, but Leopard was not. So when Leopard left Anansi's house late that night, he was so staggeringly drunk he couldn't have avoided the hole even if he had been able to see it. But he fell so hard into the hole that it knocked all his spots off. He was so drunk he didn't even care, it was just like a gentle bump. He said, "Anansi, I think I've fallen down." So Anansi helped him up and get back to his home. He went back and collected all the spots from the bottom of the hole. Well, that's fairly easy. He got all the spots from a leopard in a nice little leather pouch. Now, to get the hive of hornets. And he's thinking. And his wife said, "All you need is a gourd and a string." He said, I know, I've got this." So he got 2 gourds, one empty, one full of water, and a giant banana leaf and a string. And he tied the gourd full of water above the hornet's hive. And then he walked by with the banana leaf on his head like it was raining season. And then he stopped and turned his surprised like, "Hornet, why are you still in your paper home? Don't you know the rainy season has come early this year? Your home will be flooded." And the whole time he was there, he was shaking the string that connected the gourd. And so water was dribbling on the paper nest, and the hornets were afraid the rainy season had come early. And they weren't prepared at all. They didn't know what to do. They didn't want their paper home to melt into the rain. So while they're panicking, Anansi pulled out his second gourd. It was hollowed out, and he said, "Quick, fly into the gourd, and you'll be safe from the rain." So one by one, all the hornets flew into the gourd, and he stopped it shut and said, "Okay, I've got a hive of hornets." He went home, put that next to the pouch of leopard spots. Now for number 3, a rainbow python. "That's easy," his wife said. "All you need is a log and a piece of rope." I know, I've got this," said Anansi. So he cut a log, fairly large-sized log, and had a coil of rope. He hoisted the log up on his shoulder and walked through the forest. And as he was going, it was like he was having a conversation with the log. "No, she is too. No, she is, I promise. No, really." And Rainbow Python saw this and thought it was rather strange because people don't normally go around talking to logs. And they said, "Anansi, what are you talking about?" "Oh, Rainbow Python," said Anansi, "there you are. You know, my friend Log and I were just having a conversation about you. He thinks he's longer than you. I say you're far longer." Well, Rainbow Python was very proud of her great length. She said, "Of course I am longer than that log. I'll prove it." So that's what I said, Anansi. So he put the log on the ground, and Rainbow Python wrapped 3 times around the log. "See, I'm longer." And Anansi said, "I knew you were longer." Then he grabbed the rope and tied her to the log real fast and picked her up and carried her back to his house. Okay, that was 3 items down. So how to get the 4th one? "It's easy," said his wife. "All you need is a doll and a bowl full of porridge." Of course," said Anansi. "What exactly will I do with those?" "Well, get the doll and cover it in sticky molasses." All right, I understand." So he made a doll and he covered it in thick, dark, sticky molasses. And he made a bowl of wonderful creamy porridge all sweetened with honey. And he took the doll out to a forest and clearing and set it on a stump. And he set the bowl of porridge on the doll's lap. And he carefully tied a string to the back of the doll's head and went and hid behind a tree. And before long, one of the creatures from the forest that no one can see came out and saw the doll and said, what lovely porridge I smelled. Can I share some with you? And Anansi took the string and the doll nodded its head. And so the creature shared the porridge and was like, oh, that was so delicious. Thank you for sharing your porridge with me. And the doll just sat there. And the creature said, I said thank you. But the doll just sat there. He said, answer me when I'm talking to you. But the doll just sat there. And he got so mad, he hit the doll, but then his hand was caught in all the sticky molasses. So let go of me! And he tried with his other hand to free it. And the more he struggled, the more covered with sticky, dark molasses he got until he and the doll were one big tingly mess. So Nancy's like, I've got all 4 things. So he picked up the sticky mess that was the invisible creature from the forest and the doll, and he went back home and he got Rainbow Python and the gourd with the hornets and the leather bag full of spots, and he spun another web up to the Nyame's palace in the sky. And he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and it was a lot harder with all that stuff, but he finally made it to the top, although his arms were a little bit shaky. Said, Nyame, I have got all the things you asked for, and he laid them all out. And Nyame said, very well, Anansi, you have fulfilled my request, you may have the box of stories. Handed him the box of stories, and Anansi went to the edge of the cloud where Nyame's palace was, and he lifted up the sky blue story box, but his arms were still wobbly from his long climb, and the box slipped a little bit from his hand, and all the stories flew out from the clouds into the whole world. And Nyame looked a little bit shocked, said, Anansi, I never knew you were so generous. Why did you share them with the whole world when you could have kept all the stories for yourself? Well, Anansi didn't really mean to give out the stories to the world, but he couldn't back down now. He said, well, the stories were mine to keep, so they're mine to give away to the world if I thought about them. And he shut the blue box and he climbed back down. And said, oh, that did not go as planned. Well, Nyame sat and thought for a long time, and he sat and thought. And eventually he decided, and Anansi was right. The leopard spots, the hornet hide, the rainbow python, and the invisible creature from the forest were his to keep, but they were also his to give away. So he set them all free. And they were all furious with Anansi for having tricked them. So they all came to his house ready to hurt him. But everyone in the world had been so happy to have all their stories, everyone had gotten one when all the stories flew everywhere, that they helped Anansi and they hit him until their fury had cooled down a bit. And eventually they all got their own stories and they were happy too. And Anansi one day was looking at the empty box and he's like, I know everyone's very glad with their stories, and it probably is a good thing that they went to the whole world instead of being hoarded here, but I wish they'd saved one for me. And his wife said, oh, Anansi, you have a story. You have the blue box. And everyone will know that all the stories in the world are here because of you. So, let me know in the comments section what your favorite story is and if you can remember the first time you ever heard it. And we will see you next time on Kim's Codex.